On Insightful Inspiration, Isabelle Landreville chats with a mosaic of brilliant individuals that help shape the insights industry. We live stream episodes to LinkedIn, and you can listen on all major podcast networks. Join us, and please subscribe so you won't miss our guests' insightful inspiration and hear what drives them and how they get inspired to be successful in the insights industry and beyond. Insightful Inspiration is brought to you by Sylvester & Co., an award-winning qualitative research firm with half a century of experience.
Welcome back to Insightful Inspiration, people. I'm so happy to have you here. It's where we uncover bold ideas transforming how we understand people. I'm your host, Isabelle Landreville, the proud owner of Sylvester & Co. In today's episode, we dive into the differences between solving a puzzle and exploring mysteries, and how AI is helping researchers uncover the insights hidden in plain sight. Very excited about this episode. It's been a long time coming. My guest is Leena Doshi, Senior Manager of Research at Electronic Arts and creator of a brand new YouTube series. And yes, we'll talk about that, where she challenges how we think about data, curiosity, and the role of research in driving strategy. Leena, welcome to Insightful Inspiration.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here.
I'm really excited we're actually doing this because so I missed IIeX in DC this year, unfortunately, but everybody came back and I kept on asking people, what was the highlight? What was the thing? And your name kept buzzing out. And this whole notion about, that metaphor that everybody was fascinated about, how it kind of, the penny drop, it reframed it, it shifted their paradigm, this notion of solving data mysteries instead of puzzles. How about you unpack it for us? Because I missed it, so I want to hear all about it. Do tell.
Okay. So I can't take full credit for the puzzles versus mysteries. In his book, Intelligence for an Age of Terror by Gregory Cheverton, who is the former chair of the National U.S. Intelligence Council, he's the one that coined the term puzzles versus mysteries. But a puzzle is like a jigsaw puzzle where you put all of the pieces together to create a single picture. Solving a puzzle is relatively straightforward, simple, and usually has a single solution. A mystery, on the other hand, is complicated, ambiguous, and doesn't necessarily have a solution, a single solution, or even a solution at all. Mm-hmm. In the research world, I guess a good example would be a good example of a puzzle is, what is the market penetration for product X? It's a relatively simple ask, and you probably already know what you need to do to go solve that problem. But a mystery, on the other hand, is like, what is the definition of fun? Of course, I work for a video game industry, and so how you define fun is really important. We know that people play video games because it's fun, but what the heck does fun actually mean in practical or useful terms? So it's ambiguous, it's complicated, it doesn't necessarily have a single solution.
Okay, which that means solving a mystery.
Yes. So that's all about solving mysteries.
And I feel like, a project, I just secretly love the research question, which is, what does fun mean? I think that's fun in it all together. And if you don't have a straightforward answer, how do you know if you've solved your mystery? Like, when do you know if your mystery has been solved? Because a puzzle is puzzle. You'll see it, as you were saying. But when do you know if you've solved your mystery, or do you ever solve your mystery?
I am not, obviously it's going to depend on the mystery. However, I think in many cases, it's not necessarily going to ever be completely solved, but it's really just about trying to come up with something that's useful or effective. So if you get to a point where you can move forward with the problem that you're trying to solve, or at least take a step forward. Maybe it's not you've reached the end, but you've at least taken a step forward. Found something that's effective and useful. I think that's, that may be your solution.
Okay. And in that framework, can you share a story or maybe an example of where that solving a mystery kind of approach led to a breakthrough insight, or something really that if we were just looking to solve a puzzle, it wouldn't have worked?
So I don't have anything that I can share from my personal work. However, I do have an example that I shared in my presentation from the IIeX conference. And It's about Procter and Gamble. So in the early 1990s, Procter and Gamble was developing a product that could be sprayed into the air to neutralize bad odors. But
look at that. We
yeah,
all know what it is. Yeah.
yes. So I know it's like I act like nobody knows what I'm talking about. It's a secret. But when it first went to market, it actually didn't do well at all, and sales went from bad to worse. But P&G did not give up. They hired a Harvard Business School researcher to watch customer interviews to see how they were interacting with the product. And through this process of evaluating and understanding, and it's important to note that they were reviewing and analyzing data they already had. So they were using existing data, not new data. But through this process, they figured out that customers didn't want the product or weren't interested in the product because their houses smelled fine. They didn't think their houses had bad odors, so they didn't need the product. So as a result, P&G went through a completely revamped their marketing campaign and made it made Febreze something that you do like when you're done cleaning, kind of like the cherry on top to make your house smell like you're done cleaning.
Mm-hmm.
And by the end of the 1999, sales had doubled for Febreze, and its revenue totaled over $230 million. So it's a great example of where the ROI or the value in what you're doing or the analysis that you're doing on existing research may not be obvious at first, but with those sales numbers, eventually it obviously worked, and they figured out what to do, solve the mystery to make the product successful.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. It brings me back to, oh yes, bad odors now have a visual. Remember there was an ad that they had where bad odors around your house also had a visual sort of color to them?
Yes.
You remember that? Like the dog leaving the couch had suddenly like an odor to it and a color scheme, which was different than the garbage, different than the sports equipment in the garage. Yeah. Yeah.
So that was probably helping people identify, because I think it goes back to when they said, well, I don't have bad odors in my house.
Well, yes, you do.
Right. And so those visuals were identifying, well, actually you do. You just make
And it's really interesting. So it brings back, but yeah, there's this whole, we work in the same sphere. So there's this, we sign so many NDAs. There's just so many stories we can tell, or so, relevant studies. But there's a story that really was interesting. So this goes way, way back. Yeah. So Sylvester & Co. is more than 50 years old. I am not, but the company is. And so we have like historical stuff. And it was really interesting about, you're talking about people and consumers for Febreze, but it was interesting. So in Quebec, when they launched the cell phone, like the like the Blackberries and so forth, they actually launched them, as they did across North America, as great efficiency tools, great for productivity, great for always being on the call, which you should, like, your boss could get a hold of you, or you could do your job from wherever, or you could always be reachable. And so you could be productive and efficient and all of that. And Quebecers being Quebecers and a different culture, they just weren't picking up. And people were like, mystery, which was a bit more like rooted in culture. But the mystery was like, why don't people want to bring work outside of the physical office? Because remote work wasn't a big thing back then, right?
Right.
So why don't they want to like work everywhere, or be, work remote, or bring work outside of the office and be more efficient? Why is that? And Quebecers are like, no, there's a clear separation between work and pleasure, and there's a balance to it, and it has a start and an end every day, and I have clear boundaries, and you're telling me that this is actually going to mess with my boundaries. And sort of work will become a beast that will be boundaryless, and I will be working all the time. So they were reading into the fact that I don't want to work all the time. So they pivoted, solved the mystery, pivoted, and said, oh, it means your friends can get a hold of you all the time. Now that worked.
Yeah.
So as a social magnet and a social lubricant, that was an amazing, and it caught on like wildflower. And the sales went really up in Quebec, and everybody wanted a cell phone and a BlackBerry because of that. But they had to completely reverse the consumer benefit on its head.
Yeah. So how did they figure out the difference and how they needed to market it differently?
Well, I think back in the day, so this is a few years back. So I think the second generation of owners led the research. I'm the third generation, and they back in the day it was direct observation and a whole bunch of focus groups and IDIs and so forth to really understand what was going on. And it was really interesting because they did a really good job of doing English Canada as well as Quebec so that they could create a benchmark. Because I think there's something interesting as well if it's only specific to a market or a niche or something to sort of understand where success is happening and sort of where that mystery has been solved to actually compare and contrast with where the mystery is happening and hasn't been solved, I think is also quite interesting. But I don't know, is that something that would help you in your mind sort of solve a mystery to have a benchmark that way?
I think so, because I think any kind of benchmark, any kind of guardrails, I guess, so to speak, is going to help, because part of the challenge of a mystery is you don't know what you don't know. And so having the benchmark actually gives you some kind of guardrails to follow. It gives you an idea of like kind of where to start.
Yeah, I think it also allows you to, I don't know about you, but there's something about having a pillar, something you can trust that is
Yeah.
true,
Yeah.
that has been to sort of springboard into, okay, I know this. Can I sort of go from that? To your point, you don't know what you don't know, but if you lean into what you know and then say, is this different or,
Right.
or not, I think would be kind of a nice way.
Right.
We probably feel that study differently today because I think our toolbox is very different than when what it was probably 20 years ago. But it's really interesting how the mystery got solved because it was rooted in a cultural insight that was quite different.
Yeah.
Yeah, very much with this notion of I have a product that I don't see a purpose for.
Yes.
Yeah. Which is really the big part of it. So tell me, you recently launched a YouTube series that springs, if I understand correctly, that's sort of sprung from this metaphor from IIeX and all of that because everybody was talking about it, I think. Yeah. And what made you jump like ship? I'm just really curious to know what made you brave and bold enough because I think it's very brave. I admire your initiative immensely.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate it. So you're absolutely right. I received such great feedback and I had so many interesting discussions after the IIeX conference that essentially I wanted to keep the conversation going.
Hmm.
So my solution for that was creating the YouTube series. So it allowed people outside of the conference to share, I could share a way to share that content with with an audience wider than just the conference. And so, and I think these concepts really resonated so well because we're all facing mysteries on a daily basis. The puzzles still appear, as researchers or insights folks, the puzzles always are all about, but they're just a lot easier to solve. And so the mysteries, I think, is really what takes up the majority of our time and our thought process. And so all of these ideas that I've introduced really, I think, just create a different framework and mindset for how to approach these difficult problems.
Mm-hmm. You said you had a lot of conversations. You wanted to keep the conversation going. What were some of the questions or conversations that stand out of that IIeX speaking engagement that you thought really hit home and you thought were just amazingly inspiring or energizing?
So a lot of the conversations that I had with people approached me after the talk and they were like, it's such a great framework or just a different way of thinking about things. And we really just discussed some of the challenges that, they were facing in their own world. And we kind of just did quick brainstorms about, what about this? What about this data? How would you approach it? Where do I start? And so it was really just practical use cases for each of these individuals and how they were thinking about the problems that were literally in front of them at that moment in time.
And so do people struggle identifying a mystery versus a puzzle to solve?
I don't think it's a struggle deciding which is which. Because I mean, ultimately, if you know how to solve it, relatively easy, it's probably a puzzle. If you don't know how to solve it, if you're struggling to figure it out, it's probably a mystery,
Okay.
essentially, in a nutshell.
Okay.
Certainly the lines, I'm sure there are use cases where the lines are blurred. But
Hmm.
overall, I think deciding which is relatively simple.
Has a puzzle ever become a mystery?
I think it certainly can. I can't think of a use case off the top of my head of one that I've experienced. I'm sure just because in almost every research project that I've done, you do the project, even if it's a puzzle, like you answer the question and it just creates more questions. It's like they're in a lot of ways they're never ending, and maybe everything is a mystery because even if you answer the one question, the one problem, it just creates, well,
And I think people want to keep learning. And I think it's
yeah,
interesting. So I don't know, I'll share something with you and you tell me your POV, but
okay.
with regards to this context, because context is everything. But it was really interesting. I had this really, so we're back. I only do qual, but we're back in person quite a bit. And it was interesting how someone said at the end of the evening, we've seen, 2, 3, maybe 4 groups. It's a lot of active listening in the dark. And there's something about people kind of going, I feel like there's group think. I feel like and I'm like, is it? And I heated debate. Well, heated debate, no, but interesting conversation between 2 researchers because we overthink and overanalyze. And, from a researcher to another, you have different conversations. And I said, is it group think or is it how your brain is connecting dots? Because she was like, between every group we'd have kind of quick debrief session because the guide was shifting and changing as we were learning. And so there was this notion of let's learn what we don't know in the first group, then that we've learned this, let's go into the next group and sort of like learning 50% of what we had to learn in the first group, then like the second group was learning 50% of the remaining 50%. And so it went. And it was really interesting is it how we designed the research and how we were sort of learning as we go and growing together in our learning and curiosity? Or was it really because we didn't have leaders, and like to say I'm a strong moderator enough to not have group think. And so I think there's something to say. I think our brains can also play games on us maybe, because once you know something and you're good. I don't know.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it like that, but that's really interesting. And I bet there's a fine line between, learning as you go and then it turning into group think. And so
Mhm.
I think it's a balance that you have to walk
Yeah.
between the two.
And do you feel like as you're solving a mystery and learning as you go, starting with we don't know what we don't know,
Right.
feel like your target is changing as you're moving towards it?
Yeah, because it could be you think one thing and just like you said, learning as you go, and then you could learn something that's useful and effective, but it hasn't completely solved the mystery. It's just a step. But then once you learn that, you're like, oh, that, and then you completely change direction based on that information.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think that's what makes a mystery so challenging is it's because it's kind of like, you're wandering around in the dark with like a flashlight. So you can only see a little bit and then you move forward and you see a little bit more. And so it's really working your way through that. And that's one of the reasons why, well, many reasons why mysteries is so challenging because it's time consuming and it takes a lot of thought and it takes effort and collaboration and it's a time consuming process.
Yeah. I feel that's where we perform best, or kind of those. I don't know. I feel like that's where you want to dip your toe and want to go. Whereas the others, I don't know, maybe solving a puzzle might be more in and out, less of a journey.
Yeah, and I think as insights leaders, essentially, I mean, we get paid the big bucks for the mysteries. That's where where our value really lies, is being able to work through a mystery and being able to maybe you haven't completely solved it, but you at least have come to a conclusion, like we talked about before, come to a conclusion that's at least effective or something that you can action on, right? As a business, we always want to be able to action on things. You want things to be useful and effective. And so I think that's where our value really lies, is being able to work through a mystery and come to that effective conclusion or multiple conclusions, and being able to provide the business with some kind of actionable value.
Mm-hmm. And talking about value, I think coming back to your YouTube series, you were saying earlier, you're like breaking it down in themes to add value to the research world. And so what are some of those themes that that you break it down into to make sure you really resonate and add value to the research world?
So one of the big things out of my presentation was really embracing the idea that a goal for a research project that's a mystery, especially if it's a mystery, is understanding. And that, because typically, at least for me, I'd be like, okay, one of the first questions that I ask stakeholders is, what are you going to do with this data? Like if they come with a request, what are you going to do with it? How are you going to action on it? Meaning if you don't have actionability, if you don't have a use case, then I can't help you because it's not actionable, right? We have to draw boundaries, resources are limited. But what I've learned out of all of this and what I shared was, that may not be the right path forward. Understanding and just saying, I'm going to do this work just so I understand it better is a worthwhile effort.
Mm-hmm.
So we just talked about actionability and value, but you have to balance that with understanding, because again, when you don't know what you don't know, understanding can be a critical outcome in and of itself.
And how do you define understanding within this framework? It's a big question, I know.
It is. And I think it just, if it helps you clarify the mystery, if it helps you clarify the problem in any shape or form, then that's understanding.
Okay.
If it brings clarity to what you're trying to solve, then that's understanding.
Yeah. And there's something about empathy. I don't know about you, but there's something about like learning as a journey. And there's something like you were saying, I always ask people like, we have limited resources. And so what kind of decision are you going to make? How are you going to action on this? Which is my favorite go-to question, but also this notion of how do you learn? What is your learning style? Some people are very sensate. Some people are intellectualize everything and rationalize everything. Some people have to like the messiness of life. Some people are traumatized by the messiness. Well, it depends how messy life can be, but sometimes they're like, this was too real for me. Like a back room would have been nice. Like, like it depends on who it is. And, is it colors and emotions, sensate, intuition building, or is it more about intellectual and rationalization and so forth? I think that also, that question steers how you go about the mystery, or where you point the flashlight, what kind of flashlight you might use, and who has a flashlight also.
And I think the empathy applies, and I think that's a great point. And it applies not just to the audience, maybe that you're looking at, your customers or whoever, the players in my case, whoever they are, but also your stakeholders and the folks around, whether it's stakeholders or clients and the folks around you, because mysteries typically involve a lot of collaboration. They're usually, big and ambiguous, and I can't sit in a room by myself and solve mystery. It's going to require, I work with others. I work with, maybe interviews, not just with the customers, but with the other folks, with the marketing folks, with the product folks. And so I think that empathy really applies to both sides, to both the audience and the internal folks that you're working with, because of that collaboration piece.
Does it apply in the same way?
What do you mean?
Like empathy towards your stakeholders versus empathy towards like building empathy or having empathy towards your players in your sense. Is it the same skill? Is it the same type, or it's a bit different or not?
I think it could be different. I think it's really just like you mentioned earlier, it's understanding them and how they learn and how they react. So it's really just dependent on, I guess, the individuals. And so, yeah, the type of flashlight that you use might be different for each stakeholder or for each audience, if you've got different audiences. And so it's really being aware of, have an understanding of the folks around you and how to best collaborate and work with them.
Excellent. I think there's this general understanding, or maybe it's my assumption, but when you're trying to solve a mystery, you're like looking out or looking at primary data, maybe not looking at the data you have, but how do you actually use the data you already have to actually squeeze as much value as you can from that in solving a mystery?
In data that you already have?
Yeah. Can you solve a mystery leveraging the data you already have?
So that is a great question, because one of the key differences between a puzzle and a mystery is a puzzle, you typically, like the product, the market penetration example that I gave, you're going to go put together a research project, execute the research project, and then you have your answer. Versus a mystery, you typically start with data you already have. Because you don't know what you don't know. And so how do you build a research project about something where you've got no clarity around? You have no framework. How do you do that? The best way to do that is to gather all the data you already have, talk to the product leaders, talk to the analysts, talk to the folks that have done whoever has been involved with whatever your problem you're trying to solve, gather all of that data and start there. Because that's what you know. So when you don't know what you don't know, you start with what you have. You start with what you do.
Yeah, maybe we do know something.
Right.
Let's just go and uncover if we do know something. If we don't have something, we can lean in.
Right. So it's a place to start.
Yeah. And how do you feel like, what's the biggest hurdle that you believe researchers face in doing that and sort of with that starting point?
With
leveraging the data you already have. Yeah.
So I see two big challenges with using existing data. And the first one is, essentially, we live in a world with too much data. We've got data coming out of our ears, right? So finding, gathering, trying to sort through it all, especially when the problem is so, like we mentioned earlier, so ambiguous that it can, and no clear guardrails, it can be really difficult or overwhelming to oh my gosh, where do I start? And then how the heck do I analyze all of this without spending the next 6 months going down a rabbit hole of data? And so that's too much data, I think, is the first challenge with existing data. And then the second one is, it's crucial to be able to set aside all your previous biases, because any existing data probably had its own objectives, had its own audience definitions. And so you're using stuff that had a previous purpose, which isn't bad. It just means you have to be aware of the biases and the assumptions that went into that as you are reviewing any existing data. And I think it's really, it can be difficult in practice. It sounds easy, but I think it's really difficult in practice, just because we like you said, we overanalyze, and we make assumptions, and we have biases already in our head. And so being able to take a data set and put everything you already know aside and review it with fresh perspective and fresh eyes can be difficult, which is why it's important to just continually check yourself and make sure that you're not making assumptions or agreeing to something or dismissing something based on previous assumptions.
Yeah. Or connecting dots that should not be connected. Sometimes my team knows I don't think we need to connect those dots. I don't think they can be connected. Let's just stop asking that question. Let's just move on.
Yeah.
You're looking at something, you're connecting dots that should not be connected. I think that's part of it too.
Right.
And so do you think that the industry, based on what you're sharing and your framework, do you think that the industry needs to reframe what we call new research?
Yes. In general, I feel like we consciously or subconsciously place more value on new research over existing research. So yes, as an industry, I think we should reframe the definition of new research. So For example, if I take a raw data set and I do a whole new analysis based on my mystery and my objectives and the problem I am trying to solve, is that considered new research or is that existing research?
Well, should it be?
Well, that's it. And so, and honestly, I'd like to remove the labels altogether because ultimately I want to just ask the question, what's going to help you solve the mystery?
Yeah.
Does it matter if it's new data or existing data?
And so I think there's something too that at some point, so I've had client relationships that span 2 decades and more. So just for Exynos, I've been at this for a long time. The company is quite old, and it's really interesting how sometimes people are coming to us because they're new to the team or because, new blood, new ideas, new curiosity, new energy, new generation, new whatever. And then the same research brief, slightly different context, 2 years later. You're like, we've done this research before. Does that resonate with you? Have you been there where you go, I think we've done this, or I've been like this has come up as a project before. Have you been there?
Oh yeah, I've been there many times. It's either, like you said, the people change or the leadership changes, and somebody's like, oh, we need to do this. Okay, even though it's been done like 4 times already. And so that's part of solving the mystery is going, okay, instead of doing it again, because we don't really know what we're doing because it's a mystery, let's collect everything that we do know. And maybe we get to a point. A mystery doesn't mean you never do a new project.
Mm-hmm.
It just means that you need to start with what you have so that you figure out what you need.
And I think then who holds the mystery? Oh, this is a whole other thing, but who holds the mystery? Because if that resonates with you at some point, we're like, oh, we've done it before. How about I share with you what we have?
Right.
And then, have you seen this? Are you aware of it? If not, let me share that with you. And then we can say, is there something more that you need? Is there a double click on something? So the question is, who holds the mystery? Is the mystery held by internal sort of insights leaders? And then the puzzles are being solved by external partners or suppliers? Or do you have really long-standing sort of relationships where if the insight team even changes, you do have external partners that have that sort of living and breathing memory as well? I think it's not everybody that will say, hey, we've done this before. How about I just share with you what we have before we do something? But anyways, that's what we do. But
that is what I do a lot, or I try to do a lot with my internal stakeholders is, how about I share with you what I already have? And that's why I gave the example is if I have a raw data set and I do a new analysis, because I do that sometimes. I'm like, okay, you've got a new objective, but I think we already have data that might solve the issue. I just take that data set and I do another analysis, and that's, the answer that I provide them instead of going out and doing a whole new project. But I think the other challenge, and this is something that I have experienced, so I'd be curious what you think too, but I think as an industry, we also need to change our mindset and the mindset of our stakeholders and our clients to change this kind of unconscious bias that's in favor of new research and really accept and be happy with the new analysis with the old data set. So I don't know in your experience if that's been an issue, but I know it has for me, where they're like, oh, it's an old data set. I'm all about that.
Well, define old data set, because remember, Sylvester is 53 years old. So there's old and old. Our server is so big. And so that I do think there is old that's kind of not relevant. Like, I think we should not use this. Old.
Yeah.
How old is old? If it's a few years or?
If it's just irrelevant, it's not, it's just not, as a stakeholder, I say, I just want a new, like, I have a problem I need solved. I would be happier if it's a new data set.
Yeah. I think it happens. I think also because I work in qualitative research only, I do think that there is an experience that comes with. So there is something, and sometimes I'll do, hey, we have done this research. how about we just do a refresh? So instead of doing a full on thing, we do one or two, we make it really razor sharp, and then we sort of bring the old into the new, because qualitative research also is experienced.
Yeah, that's true.
Firsthand. So I think there's something about, if there's a lot of videos, like we have an in-house ethnographic team. So if they're involved, then there's like a docu-series, a podcast coming out of it, or something of the likes, then I think that changes it, because then they're still sort of experiencing the learning. If we do like a magazine or something, like, I think it depends on the format in which the sort of the insights live. But if it's just a deck, because PowerPoint is still kind of our go-to, because it is still, business world 101. But I think if it's just the deck, a quote is not enough to make people feel it. So sometimes we just have to do something else because of that. So I think if it's just data, I think that might be different, because there is a distance through it. But I think it's because of, meeting someone in person has a different impact on you.
Yep, and that's fair. And ultimately, I think it goes back to the question I said earlier: is what will help me solve the mystery? If it helps, do it. It doesn't matter if it's old or new.
No, and I think it's really interesting, because solving a mystery has meant, in my world, sending the leadership committee to have dinner with people across the country, just so that they understood what dinner as a family meant. And so we recruited people, and then to be invited to families, to invite the leadership committee of different companies to have dinner with them. Which is a different learning experience altogether.
Yeah.
But they each had one dinner date, so to speak, or one family they were assigned to. And you can't really, like, that doesn't really, and just that solved the mystery, because they were able to see the dynamic, see sort of a whole bunch of stuff. Everybody had their own personal experiences. I think that made it different. If it was only a deck, it would have been okay. But because it was a lived experience, it was different, I guess.
Yeah. And there are definitely, absolutely big differences between the qual and the quant. And that's a great example of, where the experience matters. Being able to provide insight into human thought, human behavior.
Yeah. Because having dinner with someone else's family is always a life experience. Trust me. Yeah. Regardless if they're really much like you. Like, I don't know if you have kids, but the minute my kid comes back from another family dinner, they're like, they do this. And I'm like, good for them. Do we pick that up now? Like, do we have an opinion on this now as a family? Like, I think just that, if your 10-year-old reacts to someone else having ketchup with something that you don't have ketchup on at home, I think it has an impact on everyone. It's just human nature. So I think, not against new research, but this notion of reframing new research in a way. Maybe it's a smaller maybe the mystery is smaller. Maybe it's more of a puzzle that ties back to the mystery, and sort of maybe being more razor sharp with new research in that sense. Would that be something you'd recommend?
I think so. Yeah. Again, it's just, whatever's going to help solve your mystery, whatever's going to bring clarity, whatever, I think the point is be open-minded. Don't assume that, a quantitative survey is going to solve it, or even like focus groups or having dinner with the family is going to solve it. It might, but you really have to keep an open mind about how to gather data in whatever shape or form that means.
And what has been your reaction? Because I'm sure we have different sort of stories, but what has been the reaction typically when we say, well, let me share what I have before we jump into net new? What is typically the reaction you get to that?
So I get mixed reactions from that. There are, and I think why I get mixed reactions, I think it comes down to a little bit of the trust that the stakeholders have with me, or the relationship that I have built with the stakeholders. So the ones that I'm, super close with, super tight with, if I say, hey, I used some previous data and did a new analysis, they're like, okay, no problem. They trust me. They know that they don't question the validity or anything like that. If it's a new relationship or somebody that I don't know as well, it's not that they're negative, but they may question it a lot more. Like, well, who is the audience and what are the assumptions and where did this come from and what were the original objectives? Just trying to make sure that it's an appropriate application, that we're applying that data set appropriately to the new question, the new mystery.
It's interesting how it always boils down to trust in our business, isn't it? It's like what I believe to be true, what I believe is stronger and will always trump a fact.
Yep.
And trust is the key sort of differentiator going from fact to belief. If I trust the facts that you're sharing with me, then I will believe in them and be on my way and embrace them. Yep. That's really interesting.
And it's that trust in that relationship is so critical in the mystery solving process, because it can be so time consuming because of that necessity for collaboration and working with others. And especially if you're asking for their time. Like, it's one thing if I go collect all of the data and do the analysis, but if I'm bringing a stakeholder in and saying, I need you to join me on this journey, and it's going to be super time consuming, and all you can say is trust the process, or trust me, that relationship becomes critical, because in a mystery, there's no guarantees of what you're going to get out of this process.
And I think that's really interesting. So in my experience, if I want to earn someone's trust, the worst thing I can do is say, trust me. So, which you're burst out laughing. So that's probably true in your world too.
Yeah.
So any words of wisdom when you are on the quest of solving a mystery and you've pointed your flashlight or on a point that did not really progress the solving of the mystery that much, like barked up a wrong tree up to a certain point. How do you manage that to not make people feel like they've lost their time or haven't been productive in solving the mystery?
Hopefully, you go back to that understanding piece.
Okay.
That even if you didn't solve anything, even if you haven't come up with anything effective or actionable, you've still learned.
Yeah.
You still understand more. And I think that's the important piece, especially I think that's an important piece to lay the foundation when you begin the process with somebody else, is to make sure that they understand that understanding is critical and a valuable outcome. Even so, if you get to a point where you don't have actionability, you do still have that understanding.
Yeah. There is this notion of, well, we thought that was meaningful and now we know it's not.
Right.
Keep going.
Right. Yeah.
Let's go somewhere else. Yeah.
It's not, because you've got your flashlight and you point your flashlight on something and you're like, well, that's not it. And now you know that and you can move on. So it's still worthwhile. It is and it is time consuming, and it's going to be time consuming in a process.
And tell me, I hate to bring it up kind of at the end of it, but I kind of have to, in this hurdle of data and blah, 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 and all of this, and reusing existing data and doing a different analysis or a different take on it, different read on it. Is AI your buddy, your friend, or is it a bit your foe in all of that?
I think it absolutely can be your buddy. Honestly, me personally, EA, of course, is very, very careful about how they use AI and how we use data, because obviously we've got, customer data, player data, and we're super, super, super careful with all of that. So I've only recently started trying to use AI as a part of this process. And I think, this really applies to anything AI. You just have to be careful and cognizant of what you're doing with it, and kind of double checking, sanity check, so to speak, of
Yeah.
any output. But because we have all of this data, I think it's absolutely critical that we start trying to use it, as it's just going to be way faster from an analysis perspective than we could ever, than as a human to read through all the transcripts
Yeah.
or reading through all the open ends and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's using it wisely. It's using it for things that are super time consuming for us as a human to do, like the unstructured data, for example. So it's making sure that you're using it wisely.
Mm-hmm. I think my biggest personal, and I'm as careful because we work with banks and stuff, but I think my biggest sort of frustration with AI is that it is such a people pleaser.
Yes.
Oh my. And I don't like a people pleaser because it just gives me what I'm like. I want the truth. I want to be challenged. Tell me I'm stupid. Like I can take it. I really, really like it used to be convincing and a good salesperson. Like it came back with answers that were like really convincing. Then they switched it a bit. And then now it feels like it's a bit more of a people. They've course corrected because people were complaining about it, but it still feels very much like a people pleaser, which bothers me. I think that frames me in my respect of it as a work colleague.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a great point. And I have experienced the same thing. It's very, very positive.
Yeah.
So, I've been playing with trying to build out personas within it and then trying to feed it and say, well, you are persona one. What do you think about this marketing campaign or whatever? And it's very, very, like you said, it's very, very positive. And so I think while it certainly has its uses, it's going to take a lot more experimentation and trial and error. And certainly, I never just take anything it says at face value. Like it's always evaluating and reviewing and second guessing it.
Yeah, for sure. Because it won't second guess you.
Yeah, right. Like you said, I want somebody. I question it. That's what I want you to do.
I mean, I can take it. I'm 40 now. I can take it. I also has spent like 20 plus years saying, oh, please be people. Don't try to please me. Just be honest. And I think now it's just has tinted my view of the world. I'm like, how come you're not honest with me? What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
It's tinted how I see the view. But Leena, this has been amazing. So do you want to play what Insightful Inspiration has kind of been up to, which is very French of me, like jaywalking in Austin in your to very good barbecue, I have to say. So
we love our barbecue in
so classic, but so amazing. Like so amazing. Totally were jaywalking 6 lanes with like buses and like 18-wheeler.
Put your life into your hands by doing that.
Well, it was really interesting how I started. I think this is parenthesis, but I started, and this was what IIeX when IIeX was there when I was speaking, and I had all my QRCA gals with me and friends, and I was like, "Oh, we can jaywalk," and I was like going for it, and at one point I went, and then I got scared and I backtracked. I was like mother duckling, and all the ducklings.
Yeah.
And we went again and served. So 6 ladies like jaywalked, and I was like the head of it was
the leader.
Yeah. And then I jaywalked back, and then people were like texting me, oh my God, are you going to be alive to speak tomorrow? Because this was the night before. Anyways, joking aside. So, which is a very French thing to do, I've been told. Maybe French Quebec, I don't know, but we'll leave it out of that. Urban myth, I think. But there's a classic kind of, you probably know it from the actor studio. So James Lipton did a really good job at the end of every single interview, which I always love, which is like those 10 kind of classic questions, which are from Bouillon Culture de Bernard Pivot. Super French. So I only have 4, and no, I won't ask you what your favorite swear word is, which is like number 10, and quirky. However, do you want to play? I've got 4.
Let's do it.
Amazing. So what other profession than your own would you like to attempt?
So I love animals. I always have. So growing up, I always wanted to be a vet. However, my love of animals. I am a super softie, and I could never like see animals in distress or in pain. And so I couldn't be a vet because if I was a vet, I'd have to have like a wellness clinic where you only see healthy animals.
You can't fix them. You can sort of, okay.
Like my heart can't take the unhealthy or the sick, or like they're old and you have to put them down. Like, no, I can't do. I'd be an emotional wreck every single day. So because I'd only have, so that was the running joke, that if I was a vet, I could only have a wellness clinic where I only see healthy pets.
I think that's amazing, though. I think that actually you do have to know yourself to figure out, where your X is at, right?
Yeah.
Own that.
So no veterinarian in my future or my past, because can't do it.
I think that's a really good reason. What is your favorite word?
So I thought about this for a long time, and I came up with the word, which is hilarious. I came up with the word effervescence just because I like to say it.
I think that is enough for me.
I can't spell it.
You hate that?
I can't spell it. So I like saying it, but I realize I'm like, I have no idea how to spell this.
So I think it's one of those fabulous words that are very far and few that are spelled, because I speak more than one language, which is probably your case too, but most people speak more than one language these days, but it is the same. So the same spelling in French and in English. That is probably the only reason why I know how to spell it properly.
Oh, is it? It's the same.
It's the same word. Yeah.
Wow.
It fits. So it does. So hear out. So effervescent. How do you say effervescent? Is that how you like?
Effervescence? Yeah.
And where's the satisfaction for you in saying effervescence?
I think it's I don't know, effervescent. I think it's the sense, effervescence.
Yeah, probably. So in French, I'll say it to you in French. Effervescence.
Effervescence.
So the sens is even longer.
Yes. Effervescence.
Voilà. So it's even longer. So if that's where you get your pleasure from, say it in French.
I'm going to say it in French from now on. That is interesting. It's the same.
Effervescence.
I wonder if it's a French word.
I don't know what's a French word and what's the English word. It could be. I don't know. I do know déjà vu is very French.
Yes.
That's all I'm sure of, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
I don't know. I wonder. I do know for a fact, though, that if you, because I work in two languages quite a bit, and there's something about if your French is extremely well written, your translation or your English adaptation is super easy. If your English version is very, very good, it doesn't mean your French version is easy to get to, because French is so much more precise and a gendered language, whereas in English, it's more conceptual and you can be vaguely precise and not precisely false, whereas in French, you can only be precisely false. So words matter even more in French than they do in English.
Interesting.
Yeah. And that's why when you actually do research, people that speak French as their mother tongue tend to be less conceptual thinkers. So when you actually do research and ask feedback on concepts, they're like, imagine this, blah, blah, blah. And then they're very literal. They have trouble sort of getting you there or getting there. So you have to moderate differently. You have to go about it differently.
Interesting.
Yeah. Well, it's language. Anyways. So least favorite word is?
Okay. So I have two teenage boys. So I consider myself at least moderately well-versed in slang. And I don't know why, but the new use of vibe drives me insane. I don't know why, but it does.
How old are your boys?
One's almost 14 and the other one's 16.
So I have a 14-year-old. How are your boys using vibe?
And this is not, and I don't know that I heard them say it. I think somebody else said it, but it's like, we're just going to see if we vibe.
Yeah, it became a verb.
Yeah. Well, Yeah, I don't know why, but so it's not the word itself. It's the slang. It's the new usage of it
Yeah.
as a verb. But hopefully there's a good vibe, or hopefully we vibe, or
Yeah. I feel like
know.
I have trouble wrapping my head around. I totally accept it, but understanding the whole concept of adulting in the way that aren't you like there's no end to adulting. Like
Right.
usually when a verb there's a beginning and an end. Like adulting in my mind is just like it's never ending thing. LDA and then woof, you're adulting and you never stop adulting. I feel like why should it become a thing at one point and there's no end to it? Why would we consider it a thing now? Like a verb now? Yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about
Yeah.
adulting.
Anywho.
Yeah, it never ends. I don't know. I'd like it. Can I? I mean, I would like it to. Can I say I don't want to adult anymore? Is that an option?
I know. I'm like, now that it's a verb, I feel like there's an out possible.
Yeah.
And I'm just, to your point, not seeing it. And
Yeah.
that's my mystery. There you go. That's
There
my
you go.
mystery. Leena, we have to solve it. Is there an existing data set we can use?
Yeah.
Maybe there is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, last one. And then this is my favorite one. What is something that a mentor has told you or shared with you that still to this day is a guiding light?
So it wasn't a mentor. It was at a conference, and she said, "You can't be what you can't see." Meaning, like, for example, this was at the Grace Hopper conference, and so it was a women's conference. And so the point being, like, as a female, especially as a female in gaming and in the tech industry, so what I do is, what I took from that is I mentor as much as I can, and I'm always looking for opportunities to encourage women in gaming and in tech. Because and trying to be, and part of what I'm doing now in the YouTube series, trying to be an example for girls or other women, and saying, if you want to be in game, if you want to game, or if you want to be in gaming, or if you want to be in tech, you can do it, and trying to set a good example so they can see what they can be and what's possible.
I love that. I love that. Oh, that's a really good one. Oh, Leena, this was amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much. You've been so generous. And plus it was fun. We got a few chuckles. I mean, this was perfect. You definitely lived up. My friends were right. Thank you so, so much.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been a lot of fun. I appreciate it.
It was awesome. Talk to you soon.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Thanks for tuning into Insightful Inspiration, your trusted market research podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with your network, and we'd love it if you could leave a review or rating on Apple or Spotify. For more on this episode and others, head over to celesco.com. And remember, insight isn't just about what we uncover, it's how we let it shape our actions. Until next time, stay curious, be kind, and keep seeking inspiration. We'll see you soon.